Hello and welcome. My name is Ryan, I'm also known as RM2K Dev. Now in the last video we've created all of the collisions for our game and that is working awesomely. One thing I did notice though is that our player couldn't collide vertically on axis. So for instance, if I zoom right here on the map, the player wasn't able to get down here. He was always sort of stuck up here a little bit. So I've enabled debug physics drawing on our objects, which basically just go into the draw event, then just do a physics draw debug and then a draw self command. Again, I have to apologize for the cars driving past, still in the same room. Now, what you guys will see is that the physics representation for our hero is actually at his feet. It's not surrounding the object, which is why we were able to get so close up here and not so close down here. You'll see that we can't actually get any closer to the walls. But what I did notice was that the side of this was actually working. So the sides were working quite well. We were able to get quite close to these walls, but we just weren't able to get very far down on them. So let's go into our hero and let's try and fix that. And what you'll notice is the collision circle has been placed at his feet. So I don't know how that happened. I may have done that in a previous video. I'm not sure. I honestly can't remember. But we're just going to zoom right in up here and we're just going to edit these so that it's in the player's center, and we're just going to make it a little bit smaller than the player just so that as he's walking it covers all of him, just like that. And what you'll notice is it's still at his feet. So what's going on here? Why is GameMaker doing this to us? I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to find out, and then I'm going to let you guys know. Okay guys, sorry about that. What I've noticed is that GameMaker isn't actually respecting the position of the physics object relative to the position of the player. It's actually drawing this object here at the origin point of the sprite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually center all of the origins on our sprites again. Now I know we did change this for the Z ordering in a previous video, but we're going to have to deal with that later. This does appear to be a bug inside of GameMaker, so that I don't think at the moment there's anything we can do about that. But by centering the origin on our hero sprite, the collision will actually draw itself from the center point. So let's run our game and have a quick look. So as you'll notice, now the center point has become the collision origin there, and we're able to get this close to pretty much everything, which does represent our physics objects a little more true. We're still able to get behind and in front of these trees. The only thing is that we can't get as in front of them as we could before. However, we could fix that by moving the physics shape on the trees. So let's enable debug physics drawing on our tree. So just go to nature, object tree, add a draw event. Inside of this we're going to add a script. We're going to call this script debug physics. And we're just going to say in here basically something along the lines of draw self and then phy. So it's going to be physics phy physics underscore draw debug. And what this does is this will draw a debug shape. If we have a look at the shape on our tree, you'll actually see that we can't collide at this base point here. So I'm just going to slide that up a little bit there. Hopefully that should let our character get a little closer as well. So now if we go and have a look at a tree, you'll see that physics shape on our trees, so we can get behind the tree, we can get in front of the tree now, and it's still blocking our collisions. So there we go, that's sort of fixed that issue there. We may need to come back later and do that also for ZBob, but for the moment that should be fine. So as you'll see, we've got perfect collisions with these walls, and yeah, everything seems to be working quite well now. The physics offset drawing is correct. We can get inside of these doors. We don't go too far above, which is good. We can go inside of this little cemetery here. I haven't put collisions on these gravestones. That's fine. We'll do that another time. So yeah, let's start working on our map transitions so we can actually teleport around and go between different maps. The first thing we need to do is we need to bring our title screen back to the top of our room list, because this contains our global variables object, our game state. So if we don't have the game state object being persistent, we're unable to persist variables across rooms. So I'm going to delete this intro room here because we no longer need it. So I just delete that. we've got our home city. Now let's go and repeat that process that I taught you guys in the map editing video to create a house. I'm going to position the player. I'm just going to move him. Let's move him down here to the pub. That sounds like a fantastic idea. So our player is over here near the pub and the inn. So I'm going to go back to RPG Maker. I'm going to create a new sample map, and I'm just going to find a pub. Maybe they have a pub that's pre-made for us. I haven't checked, but they might. Here we go. Drinking bar. That sounds perfect. So let's open that up inside of RPG Maker, and what you'll see is we have somewhat of a bar. So I'm just going to create a starting event for our player. So he starts here. And it doesn't look like there's anything that we need to actually remove from this map as of yet. So that should be fine as it is. Yep, that's good. So let's start our game in RPG Maker, save changes to our game because we've moved the player. And we just hit F7 to save our map. We've already got the script loaded, so the map shot has been taken. Let's go have a look at our map shots. So there we go. Now we have the second map in our game, map 002. Now if we load this up in Photoshop, let's just do that. Again, highlight the whole thing, add a slice around it, right click, divide the slice up into chunks. So let's make this slightly smaller. Our horizontal is going to be 320. No, let's make it 360. There we go. So it's exactly half, 360. And our vertical, we're going to make, so our vertical lines are going vertically down. So this is actually, vertical is actually a horizontal axis. It's a bit weird, I know, but it'll work. So if we make it divide equally across two slices, we should get perfect. We could make it 3, but that makes it a little bit harder for us to work. So let's just make it, I'll tell you what, let's make it 3 because it'll probably be better for the game's performance anyway. And just press OK. And hopefully that should be a power of 2 and shouldn't really affect our graphics card too much. Actually, they're not powers of 2 because they're rectangles. That's silly me. So save for web. Just hit the save button. We need to rename this one here to be Home City. There we go. So we're going to call this one here just pub. There we go. And save. That saves out all of our slices into this folder that we've created previously. There it is, and we're just going to call this one here pub. So back inside of Game Maker, we need to come to our backgrounds, levels, right click and create a new group. Call this group pub. Then we need to drag all of those images for the pub. There's only 6 images, so that's not too bad. Drag those in as backgrounds, there we go, and move those into the pub folder. Okay, so now what we can do is we can just create a new room. We're going to call this rm_pub. We need to find out how wide it needs to be. So 27 by 22 our map is in tiles, according to RPG Maker. So in our calculator, we need to go 27 times by 32 is 864. And what was the other one? It was 22. So 22 times by 32 is 704. There we go. So that is the size of our pub. We need to make this room a physics world. 0.0 on the gravity. Now under tiles, levels pub 01, we just begin to place these in the map. We've run into a small problem here. That is that these tiles are not multiples of 32 because I used the horizontal divide equally. So I'm going to need to re-export those and re-import those. I'll do that really quickly and then I'll get back to you. Okay guys, I'm just back in Photoshop here. I'm going to take this divide horizontally. I'm going to set this into 240, so that's definitely a multiple of 32, and I'm going to divide vertically into I'm going to divide vertically into slices of 480. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do it 240 by 240. So this is part of the process. You sort of need to work out what these dimensions are going to be. Larger dimensions obviously do make it easier for you to chop and paste into GameMaker, but smaller dimensions are better for performance. So let's just do that now. Okay guys, it looks like I've done that again, so I'm just going to fix that up properly. Hang on, give me 2 seconds. Okay, so I fixed up the issue. Basically, I was dividing it by a number that wasn't dividable by 32 evenly, so I've divided these now into sections of 320 by 320, which is 10 tiles by 10 tiles. There we go, you'll see that those now match up with the grid on 32 by 32 perfectly. Okay, so now that we've done this, we need to come back and do our collisions again. Once again, we just go into our objects, select the system object collision. We can just paste these around our map and drag them out so that they do cover the areas that we want them to. Okay, so now we have our pub, which we're basically going to use for our hero to travel into. So we just make sure all the settings are set correctly. The speed is 60, the physics need to be set to 0 gravity on the y-axis and the x-axis. We need to enable the use of views, visible when the room starts, copy the settings from our other map. It's following the hero object, and the borders are 320 by 240, which keeps it centered on our hero at all times. I think that's pretty much everything that we needed to do. We can now save this map. So now we have our home city and our pub. We need to create some sort of teleport event. So let's begin by doing that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a system object. It's going to be called, in a group called warp. We're just going to create a sprite. We're going to call this sprite hero underscore start. We're sort of copying the way RPG Maker works by doing things like this. So it's a 32 by 32 sprite. I'm just going to make a blue border, dark blue on the outside, maybe a lighter blue on the inside. There we go, and an even lighter blue, but this time it's going to be 64 opacity, filled in the center. Oh, actually, oops, I need to delete that center part, so just delete. There we go, so it's transparent, and then we fill it up with this light blue. And then I'm just going to put some text. I'm going to use the very dark blue. It's just going to be called Hero Start. Oops, that needs to be full opacity. There we go. And just center that as best as you can inside of GameMaker. Let's increase the font a little bit as well. There we go. So they have 1.5 on each side, 1.5, and then 3, 4, 2, 3. So there we go. 2, 3. Yeah, so we can't vertically align this perfectly, but that'll do for now. There we go, so that's our hero start object. Now we need to create a system object. Let's match the groups, so we'll call this warp. Create an object, we'll call this object underscore hero underscore start, and give it that image. So now in our pub, we need to add a object hero start to the map. We're just going to place that. Let's place it here. So now we can see on our map we've got this hero start. Back in our object we need to set visible to false and press OK. So now we need to create a warp object. So let's just do the same process that we just did. Create a sprite, and we're going to call this one sprite hero warp. We'll edit the sprite, create a new sprite. It's 32 by 32. This one's going to be red, so dark red on the outside, a lighter red on the inside. Make the center transparent, and then we just put a 64 opacity bright red in the middle. And then we go back to our dark red and add some text that's going to say warp. And that needs to be full opacity, and we need to shrink this down just a little bit so that it fits. Maybe a little more. No, we need to go smaller than size 8, so let's just go 6. There we go, so we have a warp event. Just center that and press OK. There we go. Okay, so we need to create an object for that. So for this, we're going to use a base object like we did for the NPC. So we're going to call this object base underscore warp. We're going to give it that sprite. Press OK. Now we need to actually create something that's going to actually take the positions and move us to where we want to go. So let's create a group under here, and we're going to call this locations. We'll create an object inside of that, and we're going to call this object warp underscore pub. So this is the warp that's going to take us to the pub. We'll set our parent to be the base warp. So system warp object base warp. And what we need to do is we need to say users physics, and this time it needs to be a sensor. So what this means is that when the hero touches this event, it will trigger once and only once. So what we need to do now is just modify the shape to be a box, which it needs a sprite, so we're going to give that the same sprite that we gave the other one. Warp. Let's select OK. So now from our home city, we're going to create a warp event on the doorway. So we have the warp sort of not here, but just on this doorway here. So there it is, it's right there. Maybe red probably wasn't the best choice. Let's change that text to white. There we go, and if we just make that text white, just overlay that, make it bold. So just put it over there. I'm just going to delete the old text as well. Makes it a bit cleaner. Oops. There we go, that'll do. Alright, so basically when we touch this, we want to trigger a warp event to the pub map. So inside of here, what we need to do is we need to go on collision with... Actually, I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're just going to go into base warp. We're going to add the collision event with the hero here. So on collision event with the hero, we're also going to add a create event. We're going to have 3 variables, and they're going to be var dest underscore map. We're going to have var dest underscore position and var dest underscore position underscore y. Sorry, that needs to be underscore position x and y. Okay, so I'm working on this as we go, guys, so you're just going to need to bear with me while I create this as well. So in our warp pub event, actually I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll just say, yeah, we don't need a position, we just need a map, dest map. So in our warp pub we need to add a create event. It's going to inherit, so it's event underscore inherited. Then we set dest underscore map equals rm underscore pub. Now in our base warp, when we collide with the player, we need to add a add a script that basically says room go to, and it's going to be dest underscore room. Excuse me. So now when we collide with the object warp pub, which basically sets our destination to be the pub, the base warp will take us to the pub room. What we need to do when we get to the pub room is we need to say move him to the location of object hero start. So let's just test and make sure that this works first. So from home city, we're positioned just here, yep, just outside the pub. Let's just give that a test and see if that works. Okay, so that isn't working. So we need to find out why that's not working first. The base object needs to use physics and needs to be a box set to sensor. The collision shape also needs to match the sprite, just like the other one. Okay, so we have a small error here. It doesn't know what dest underscore room is. So I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to find out what that error is, and then I'm going to let you know what the fix is in a second. Okay guys, the error was I called it dest map. I actually wanted to call it dest underscore room. So go ahead and change all those instances of dest underscore map to dest underscore room, and that should fix the issue. Nope, that did not fix the issue. I'm going to pause the video again and find out what does. Okay guys, I figured out what the problem was. I've placed in the world here, you guys probably already knew this and were laughing at me, the base warp instead of the warp to pub object. So I need to add a warp location object pub. That should resolve this issue. So let me just make sure that all of my variables are still set up correctly. So we need to inherit the event. Sorry, while the video was paused I changed a few things. Dest room equals negative. Yeah, so in the base warp create event, set the destination room to be equal to -1. And then inside of the collision with object hero, room go to destination room. So inside of the object warp pubs create event, you set the destination room to be the pub. There we go. So as we collide with that sensor, we get teleported to the pub room. So now the next thing that we need to do is position the player at the hero start location. I'm just trying to think of the best way to do that. So in the base warp event, after we go to destination room, I just want to see if after we go to the room we can still use commands from this object. So I'm just going to go show message test. What this means is that first of all we get transported to a different room. Does this command here still execute? So yes, that command does execute. The screen obviously didn't draw itself in time, but that command did execute. So that's good news for us. What that means that we can do is we can say object hero dot phy underscore position x equals object hero start dot x. We do the same for y. And what this should do is this should move our hero to the starting position for that map when he enters the room. And no, it doesn't. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to try and figure out why. Oh, here we go. Object underscore hero underscore start is capital S, sorry. There we go. That should do it now. No, that still didn't do it. Hero start.x. Why didn't that work? .x. Okay, now I'm going to pause the video and figure out what's going on. Okay guys, I'm really sorry about all of that. I have figured out what was missing. In the object hero, you need to tick the box that says persistent, And what this means is that when we do change map, there is an instance of object hero that exists there. Now in the object base underscore warp, in the collision event for object hero, just say room go to destination room, and in the create event for the object hero start event, set the object hero phy position x to be equal to x and the phy position y to be equal to y. So what will happen in this instance is the player will collide with the warp event, which will transport the player to another room. The player object is then persistent, so that object still exists in that new room, and in the create event of the hero start object, it will move the player's physics position to the location of that object. And hopefully, if all is well, and I do believe everything is well, mainly because I tested it off camera, this should work perfectly. And there we go, now we are in the pub. So we can have a bit of a walk around, we can collide with things. So I'm going to quickly do the other, the warp to let us exit the pub, and that should be that. So actually what I'll do real quick before I do that warp is we're going to set a return variable so that we can actually return to our previous x and y coordinates. So in the base warp collide with object hero, let's add a game state dot switches. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to quickly check how we were using this switches. Here we go. So let's take that. Here we go. Object warp. Okay, so in our base warp event collision object game state dot switches, and we're just going to call this one here last underscore pos underscore x, and it's going to be equal to object hero. Actually, it's going to be equal to this is an interesting one. Object hero. This may not work, so if this doesn't work, I'll sort this out off camera and I'll show you guys in the next video how this works. Phy position underscore x. Position x. We do the same thing for the y variable. Last pos y equals phy position y. Let's just copy that. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to add another warp event. This one's just going to be called, let's create an object. We'll call this one object underscore warp underscore last underscore pos. So what this should do is this should take us from where we are. So when we do warp into a room, we should be able to exit that room without having to set a warp back up. Otherwise we'd need to have 2 warps for every single warp position that we need. So this is going to be a physics object, it's going to be a sensor, and it is going to have a box collision shape, and the sprite will need to be the same, so it's the warp sprite. There we go. So in the collision event with the hero, we need to add a script. There we go, we'll just save that in there. We'll go back to our base warp. We also need to store the current room. So we just need to say last underscore room underscore x. Last underscore room is just going to be equal to room. So that's the room that we're currently in. So now in our last warp, we need to say room underscore go to, and this is going to be the last underscore room. Just like that. And then we need to set the hero's position x to be equal to the last x, and we'll do the same thing for y. Like I said, I'm not too sure if this is going to work. If this doesn't work, I'll do it off camera and I'll show you guys how to do it in the next video. See, I need to also save that object and just put that in the pub. System warp last warp point. Okay, so it sort of worked. It didn't work perfectly. It didn't actually move our position back to where it was, but you get the idea. So that's sort of working. We'll fix that up in the next video because this video is getting really long. So I'm gonna stop this video here, guys. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and like this video. Share it on Twitter, Facebook, with all your friends, anyone who's interested in game making. I've been RM2K Dev, also known as Ryan or Ryan.